Very pleasant good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Morning Briefing. I'm Jeff DeForest, along with one Mike Lubitz, and we're happy to have you along for the ride. Is it okay, Lubie? And I'm getting a little feedback here, but is it okay, Lubie, if we start out with a joke? Can we start out with a joke on today's program?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, because that's the spirit of what we're doing here. We made it halfway through the year. Somebody sent me this. I think it came from either an online streaming outfit, or it came from somebody that was writing something, but it was the Morning Brew, and they said an asteroid passed 180,000 miles from Earth the other day. Did you see that story? 180,000 miles from Earth, and Angel Hernandez called it a strike. With that, I mean, if you're betting your brains out as we enter into July, and happy July, we're halfway through the year, 2024. I can't believe it's half over.
Yes,
Bet Online is your number one source, Libby. You know this.
Yes.
For all your sports betting and all of your sports betting needs, from baseball, golf, soccer, right on through all the top fights, UFC, MMA, boxing. Did you see my man Teofimo Lopez the other night? Boom, knockout city. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. That's a very unique aspect. We didn't have that when I was growing up as a kid. When the game's over, head on over to the online casino. You can get involved in a game of poker or blackjack, or play one of the over 150 slot games that are available to you. Head to the website today to get in on all the action. Use the promo code BELIEVE for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit of up to $250. Very nice. Bet Online, the game starts here. All right, Lubie, I think you made the right decision yesterday. You opted not to go to the parade, the Panthers parade. I happen to live a few miles north of where the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers were beginning their parade. And I did my walk of life. I'm out there early in the morning yesterday, about maybe 2 hours before the parade was scheduled to start at 11 a.m. And I'm looking at the skies, Lubie, and I'm thinking this is going to be one hell of a shit show by the time they get this thing going. And sure enough, it just started pouring before it even got started. Over 200,000 people, Lubie, showed up for this parade. You, I know, were not among them, and I think it was a wise choice on your part.
Yep.
Because you couldn't have gotten near this place. And they always say that the denouncement of South Florida sports fans is that we're fair weather fans. And that's probably true, because my understanding was, we're investigating this story, that of the 200,000, over 100,000 had decided to go to the parade because it was announced somewhere online, a bogus hacked account announced online that they were giving away free handicap parking stickers at the parade site. And so people were racing there, because that's kind of what we're into here in South Florida. A boat pulls up to shore on a beach there, coming in from some other destination. Unfortunate people trying to make a new life for themselves in America. And what's the one thing they have when the immigration people meet them on the shore? The one thing they already have is a handicap parking sticker. That's your free pass. That's your ticket to get into anything in South Florida. But we were dead wrong about this, and we've said it many, many times on a variety of shows that we do here, many of which are locally oriented. And we said that we thought Paul Maurice a couple of years ago, when he was hired by the Florida Panthers, I don't know that it was a giant mistake. It just seemed like one of those patchwork moves that they make, where they get a nondescript coach who's not going to be of any particular consequence. And then it seemed like he was also bereft of personality. We could not have been any more dead fucking wrong, Lubie. Not been any more dead wrong. Because it turns out that this guy, we thought he was the French Joe Philbin. We had Joe Philbin as a coach here with the Miami Dolphins for, 4 years? 4 really ugly, mediocre years. And he was completely devoid of any kind of personality. In fact, yes. People got on him by saying, hey, the only thing that he says that's of any interest is when he compliments the other team on beating the Dolphins' brains out. And Joe Philbin press conferences became classic, must-see TV. Paul Maurice was in that category until he started opening his mouth after the team started winning. And, man, the guy turned out to be just a pure delight when it came to any kind of quote machine. And that was great when he said during the course of the playoffs things were starting to go south for the Panthers. And he said, this isn't the Oprah Winfrey show. There's no room for emotions, Lubie. But sure enough, he turned out to be a great guy. But far from the French Joe Philbin. My God, he was more like the French Joe Pesci. as he was delivering his speech yesterday. Did you catch any of this, Lubie? I don't know what you're doing. Are you reading War and Peace over there? What do you got going on?
I watched
I mean, you look good in the Croatia shirt, but
I
let's get
watched
with it.
the entire. I'm here. You're
Yeah.
talking. I watched the entire parade. I was not going to be there because it was freaking raining, and just standing in the rain sucks. But Maurice is night and day from Joe Philbin. I was frustrated in the middle games because they had fallen apart and weren't playing their style. But he was 4-0 in Game 7s. He's now at 5-0 because the guy, his calm, cool, collected nature for the majority of the time, has guided this team to now Stanley Cup title. But he does have a fired up nature, as we've seen in many a different moment. And you saw at the parade where it was live, so they couldn't bleep him, and he was just dropping them.
That was it. It was one F-bomb after another. It was incredible. It was like a guy that just got a sandwich that was supposed to be on toasted rye at a local deli, and it came on plain rye bread. And he just started cursing and swearing and going nuts. But it was a lot of fun. Should the Panthers be a couple of points out of a playoff spot midway through the next season, you will see nobody showing up at the Panthers Arena, and they'll be screaming they need a new facility. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to survive down here. But that's the way of the world when it comes to sports. All right, so the parade turned out to be a success. The rain kind of eased off a little bit as the buses started rolling with the players. Players couldn't have been any better. It was a wild celebration. And so we come into July as a hockey town here in South Florida. And congratulations once again to the Florida Panthers for winning what seemed to be an unlikely Stanley Cup championship when the franchise got started 30 years ago. Parade of free agents. You love this. Nobody loves off-season NBA talk. I mean, Wojnarowski's making a fortune off this. I guess that guy, Shams Charania, is also making a lot of money speculating. Windhorst still has a job. And is Windhorst getting a little better at this thing since he detached himself from being tied at the hip to LeBron James? Because he seems to be one of the few analysts that's making sense on some of this NBA stuff, and he's starting to say things that he never would have put forward and put out in public in the past there, ragging on Luka Doncic. So maybe he's coming on a little more strongly. We might have to take his reports a little bit more seriously than we have in the past when he had, let's face it, I mean, it was literally a season-long blowjob of LeBron James, and that was his only purpose on TV. But parade of free agency. So Paul George looks like he's going to sign with the 76ers. That's the word, Lubie. I think that makes for a very interesting proposition, does it not?
Yes.
You're talking about a big three then of what you're hoping would be a somewhat healthy Joel Embiid. He's one of those guys also that you're thinking around a playoff time, what injury will he be trying to nurse himself through? Tyrese Maxey, who you thought was a schmuck, but I was touting him as a budding superstar. He turned out to be that. And Paul George, very consistent. I mean, he's been in the league a lot longer. I mean, he started out, did he sign when Kuzi was breaking in as a rookie? This guy's been in the league like 16 years, Lubie. It's incredible.
And
But still a very functional player and a nice guy to have as your third option. Plays a little defense, was an all-defensive player a few times in his career, and I think that makes Philadelphia formidable, does it not?
yeah, yes. I mean, they were formidable before. Their problem is Embiid staying healthy, and that's the thing. You've now added another dude who's hurt a lot. Look, George actually wasn't bad in the playoffs last year. The problem is he can only do it for certain stretches. Like would have a good first half and then do nothing in the second half of games. And the Sixers are going to need him because you can't count on Embiid. Like the Sixers had an interesting thing going last year, and they probably would have beat the Knicks if not for the refs totally handing them the series. But even then, they would only go so far because Embiid was clearly hurt. He actually played every other game really well. It was almost like Luka, where he'd give you a really good game, and then he would be dead to the world. Like that's sort of his career, and that's the problem with the Sixers is you do need him desperately. He is one of the top 5 or 8 best players in the world. But he's hurt, and this has been his issue since he came into the league. I mean, and he's playing more now than he did early on. He's not missing entire seasons, but come playoff time, you can't count on him. I mean, and that's the problem for the Sixers is you now just went and got another older dude who's always hurt. So I think by roster, I mean, Maxey's ascended to becoming a legit all-star every year. Like by roster, yeah, they're as good as, including the Celtics, they're as good as anyone in the East. I don't know what like the injury thing, being a Heat fan, we've learned matters. Like,
Oh, yeah,
guys.
well, especially when it's Embiid. It's an interesting lineup, though, and an interesting insertion into the Eastern Conference race as the Philadelphia 76ers, what would have been among the favorites, maybe to knock off the Celtics if they hadn't done much of anything. And getting Paul George certainly is not going to hurt their chances. A couple of other Chris Paul was cut by the Warriors. Klay Thompson also looks like he's going to play somewhere else next year. Or some speculation he might make it to the Lakers. I don't think the Lakers, unless LeBron James plays for free and says, listen, just give Bronny whatever money that you have left over after you sign Klay Thompson. But is Klay Thompson a shot fighter at this point, or would he be? You could see him being a complementary player to LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and maybe finding his stroke again. But when a guy loses his shot, Lubie, that's never a good sign. So he's more likely, supposedly, according to all of the reports, to end up in Dallas, who has the possibility of making a little bit more cap room to pay him a more realistic salary, which what is realistic in the NBA anymore, Lubie? Could you have imagined Emmanuel Quickly after he was traded from the Knicks somehow being worth, I mean, I know it's not relative to any normal person's salary or job, what goes on in the NBA, but in your wildest imagination, could you have pictured Emmanuel Quickly being a $25 million a year player?
No,
It's
I mean,
unbelievable.
the money guys are look again, and I don't care. It's not like
It's not our money. We know that. Yeah.
deal, and fans are like, oh, I don't care if they're getting it because the owners have it. So let them. I'd rather see the players get it than the owners. Like, that's fine.
Sure.
It's just it still is crazy.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it? I mean, where is this money coming from? Those Chinese sneaker sweatshops? Where the fuck is this money coming from that you can pay a guy who was coming off the bench for the Knicks, got traded because they didn't think they were good enough with Quickly and company. And sure enough, he goes to Toronto, which is a team that outside, if Kawhi Leonard's shot doesn't bounce in there, the Toronto Raptors are among the most irrelevant franchises in basketball, in spite of the fact that they've had some pretty good teams at different times.
Yeah,
including a long tenure there where they were decent with Chris Bosh. They only had Kawhi Leonard for that one season, but they had been representative, and yet they would be a distant afterthought. The Toronto Raptors, if it wasn't for that one shot, I mean, remember that thing? It bounced in. It was like the Allen Houston shot when the Knicks beat the Heat. And, front rim, backboard, and in. And you kind of just shrug that off and take it when it goes in. But as he was falling out of bounds, Kawhi Leonard makes that shot, gets the Raptors and Nick Nurse their only championship. But where do they have the money? I mean, $25 million to pay Emmanuel. Nothing wrong with Emmanuel Quickly, but it's hard to believe that an average player in the NBA or a slightly above average player in the NBA is worth that kind of coin at this stage. It should be an investigation, Lubie, no? So anyway, that was one story. And Obi Toppin, who was another Nick Castoff, ends up with the Pacers, and he signs a very lucrative deal, although nowhere near the category. I think he was getting like $15 million a year for coming off the bench and scoring 10 points. Obi Toppin. Spectacular dunker. A lot of fun to watch when he has a ball around the basket and nobody near him. But other than that, I don't know. Obi Toppin, does he really set your boat afloat?
He's like a mid to end bench guy. That's what's interesting about it. It's not that guys are getting paid. I don't give a shit, whatever.
Yeah.
It's that anyone gets paid. Guys that like barely are in the rotation now, if they're up, they just like the guy, Patrick Williams. He was a former Knoll. I liked him. He was a top like 5 or 6 pick. He's been totally underwhelming with the Bulls to the point where you openly forget he's on the Bulls and they're giving him the 4-year, $90 million. Like, it's so just because a guy comes up, you just pay. Like, I don't remember any of this. Like, it's weird. Like, what people are look again. Anunoby is a nice player. Anunoby's literally his like definition is one day he'll be great. Like, he's literally the supreme potential guy. He's making $42 million. He's gonna make $40 million a year.
It's amazing.
And we still don't know what he is. Like, he doesn't play most of the time. Like, it's weird.
Definitely strange to see how out of proportion these salaries are with what they were even just, 10 years ago?
Like 5 years
Pretty
ago.
amazing. I mean, these television rights fees must be exorbitant. No wonder TNT's getting out of the game. They just said, hey, you know what, Adam Silver? Go fuck yourself with this, business about televising NBA games. Nobody cares about the regular season anyway. It's boring as hell. I'm sure the executives were screaming that. Today's a national holiday also, Lubie. I know July 4th is coming up on Thursday, and it's among my favorite holidays. My birthday's the next day. I'm a red-blooded American, regardless of what's going on with this political circus that's happening right now, where we have one guy who, as we said, running for president, that you couldn't believe a word he said if his tongue was notarized, and the other guy, unfortunately, you can't understand a word that he says.
Yeah.
How did it come to that, man? But
know.
what happened to John F. Kennedy making speeches? I mean, somebody that actually had some kind of compelling approach to turning on the American public to the idea that this country was indeed going to be great again. That would be, I mean, imagine this. You got this con man running around, and that's the guy that's going to bring us back. That's fantastic. But my favorite holidays, July 4th, of course, celebrating American independence. And then my birthday comes the next day. So that's great because there's a little bit of leftover cheese from the July 4th celebrations to go ahead and enjoy the 5th and make it a combined thing. Comes on a Thursday. But today is Bobby Bonilla Day.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And the story goes, and I don't know all of the details of it because the math gets a little bit hairy. But Bobby Bonilla, he was traded back to the Mets, and they picked up a contract that had $5.9 million in deferred money at 8% interest. Think about this. This is going back to like 1999, somewhere in there, because, of course, Bonilla was a player with the 97 Marlins who won the World Series and then kind of drifted around. I don't know that he was a shot fighter at that point, but he certainly was past his prime even when he was playing for the Marlins. And so the Mets, with the Wilpons, strapped for cash. They make a deal and they defer the payments, but somehow they get hosed in the Bernie Madoff scam. And the $5.9 million with 8% interest turned into $29.8 million. And so Bobby Bonilla has been getting $1.2 million plus a little bit of change every July 1st for like the last 20 years. And I think he has many more to go. What a fucking great job.
Yep.
That's unbelievable.
Yep.
So, it's a day of celebration. And you know what my theory was. I told you this when I first met you, Lubie, in the business. And you said, boy, you must really love this business. Yeah, you got a lot of things out of it. And you're doing well, respected around town. You got a little bit of capital. And I said, Lubie, my dream is to sign a 5-year guaranteed contract right now and get fired on the first show and just collect the rest of the money coming from the beach. Unfortunately, when we finally did get fired from that radio job, we had nothing coming from any source. It had to start a whole new adventure. So we're happy to be here on Caffeine TV. But how great of a deal is that? That's right up there with the best sports deals ever, isn't it? I guess the greatest sports deal ever would be credited to the guys that own the St. Louis team in the ABA.
Oh, yeah.
The brothers who, instead of taking a rather minuscule buyout to give up their franchise when the leagues merged, they said, yeah, you know what? We'd like a small piece of the television rights. This came at a time, you talk about having a vision for business. That came at a time where they weren't even showing NBA Finals games live. Those were on tape delay.
Yep.
So what were the television rights worth? Squadooch. But it became a deal where they made more money off of that deal, I think, than anybody in the history of sports, percentage to what money they would have originally had they just accepted the buyout. So Bonilla compares favorably with that, doesn't it, for an individual? I mean, that took tremendous vision, but who figured this guy was still going to be getting paid $1.2 million every year? Well, when does that end, Louis? Does anybody know? Is that a lifetime deal? It has to end at some point.
It's not a lifetime. I thought it was 25 years, but you're not wrong. Like, I think we're past 25 years. So I'll look it up. I don't know. It should be ending by now.
How much juice are they paying on this thing? My God, it was originally $6 million. You talk about, an exorbitant amount of vig that you had to put up. But, the Wilpons, they really did. They were among those people that were face down in that canal in Boca Raton. Remember we were playing golf out there at Broken Sound? And we saw two bodies face down in the canal. And nobody was even paying any attention. Nobody even bothered to fish them out. And so the guy looks at me as I'm about to hit and says, well, you're away. Go ahead. I said, well, what about the two bodies in the canal? He said, don't worry about them. Madoff victims. They didn't even give a fuck. It's incredible. All right, Lubie, we're halfway through the baseball season. Aaron Judge is still on fire. Edwin Diaz, the Mets are crying in New York City. They're really upset. The Met bullpen has blown a couple of games as the Mets were just getting the acknowledgement that, hey, you know what? Maybe it's not going to be so bad. Stearns, their general manager and president, the guy that came from Milwaukee, he was crowing that, you know what, we'll be buyers at the trade deadline. And then Edwin Diaz gets caught. Did you see him when he came off the mound? He looked like Lester Hayes from the Raiders in the old days. He had like stick him on his face. No wonder nobody can hit this guy's stuff. He throws it 100 miles an hour, and then he's got like glue on the ball.
God.
He got caught literally with like a thing of Gorilla Glue. It was in his back pocket of his uniform. He thought he was going to get away with it. So he was suspended for 10 games, which for a closer, this is a guy potentially could be pitching virtually every day. And it's killing him. It's killing him. You're killing me, Whitey. You're killing me. So they've gone into the tank there, and they're hoping this guy comes back pretty soon. I guess, he's got another week to go. All right, a lot of fun being with you today. Hey, peel yourself off the mat Monday. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make all your wagers at betonline.com and take advantage of that bonus offering they have for you. And we will see you next time. I'm Jeff DeForest. We'll see you next time on the next edition of The Morning Briefing.